So we're going to be drawing with light. Now this takes a little bit of setting up, so you need to think about what it is that you'd like to capture. So that could actually be an object. So I'm showing you with this in an upright position, but actually this activity is much better flat on a table, but it's a bit trickier to record, so that's why we're doing it up this way. But if you put your black paper out onto a table, you then need a light source. So I've got this, but you could have a bedside light, it might be you just have a torch, anything that creates light, you can pop it onto your table. And then it's up to you as the artist to create the light that you're going to physically draw on the surface. So if this was flat, I'd think about different ways of positioning it. You can then create things like silhouettes and stuff like that by putting different things in front of it. So it might be that you have some still life objects that you'd like to put up in front of your light. Again, it's not going to be something that's going to be a perfect silhouette. It's about disrupting that perfect light source to create an interesting shape and series of shapes on your surface of paper that you can then work into. You also need to be in a relatively dark space. Within my studio here, it's quite tricky to make it completely dark, but it's definitely dark enough to be able to create that contrast. So as long as you can see the light on the surface of your paper, it's absolutely fine. So it could even be shining the torch of your phone onto your paper, anything. This is quite a quick activity. And it's also an activity that you can move around as you're doing it and change it. You can change the light source, so it will create quite an abstract image when you come to finish it. But what's fantastic about it is it means that you're completely absorbed in the surface and actually what you can see rather than what you think you can see. Quite often with drawing and painting, you're drawing what you think you can see rather than actually what's in front of you. Brain is really distracted by images that we've seen before, so what a perfect face should look like, and actually what's in front of you is not what you're thinking. So this is really good for tuning those observational drawing techniques. So I'm just going to put my light source just down here so it creates a bit more contrast. But as I said, if you do this activity flat on a table, you'll be much more in control of the shadows and the different shapes that you're forming. So I'm just going to move my light source so it creates some contrast on the surface of my paper. So torches are also really good because they can just give you a really nice, strong directional light to work from. So what I'm going to use to draw with is oil pastels. So they are great for working quickly because they're nice and soft, so it means that they apply to the surface of the paper really flexibly, so you can work into it, move things around, which is what you want to be doing when you're drawing and when you're trying to catch something at speed. So you could also use chalks, you could also use pencil if you wanted to, anything, or pen, anything that just allows you to work at speed nice and quickly. What's lovely about oil paint is that they have all the kind of qualities of paint but just not quite as much mess, so they're lovely to work when you want something to be quite instant as well. So what I usually do with oil pastels is I usually take the paper off so that it allows me a bigger surface to work with, and also I usually snap them so that they've got something that's just a little bit more controllable to work with, so that it's not quite such a big shape. So I'm going to start by just limiting myself to white and black, but it could be that you'd like to use a limited palette but with colours, so you might like to just go for yellow and red, or you might like to work with a green and a light blue or something like that, but keep it really limited because it's something that is quite an abstract kind of subject matter, so you want to keep things as simple as possible for yourself. So it could be that you've got something in front of your light. As I said, if it was on the table, then you could set that up quite easily. I've set this up so that it's more of the shape that's being produced from the light itself, so from the light source. So I'm just gonna, you have to do this, if you're doing it upright, you need to sort of stand to one side so you're not affecting the light itself. So it's about capturing those instant reactions to the light. So if I was doing this in a workshop setting, I'd have all of this on the floor surrounded by lots and lots of light sources, so there'd be multiple light sources, and this is something you could do quite easily if you were set up on a table, is you could have a torch come in, just laid down flat from here. You might have the light from your phone or a light from a lamp coming in from a different direction, and then you can play with the composition in that way. So I'm just pressing down quite lightly with my oil pastel, and then as I'm more sure of those real key light areas, I'm just going in with a bit more confidence. But what's really interesting with this is, again, it's about what our brain is telling us. So our brain might be saying that that this is a circle, or actually this is a straight line, and it will be disrupted by lots of different variations of that bright light. So make sure you're being quite strict with yourself, that you're not just colouring it in all with the same pressure, so you're creating the same mark. Try and vary your mark making to capture that light on the surface. So again, this will be something that is abstract, and it's up to you as the artist with the setup that you make to decide how abstract it's going to be. So it could be that it's disrupted by really quite recognisable forms, so things like still life objects, or things that you just want to create patterns. So what's exciting about this is that you're creating the composition using the light, and then you're then using the oil pastel to capture its physical presence that's on the surface. So this is quite a nice activity for really training those observational skills, really thinking about that discipline of drawing what's actually physically there rather than what your brain is telling you should be there. So I'm going to work in with my darker colour just to soften some of those shapes. And what's quite nice about this is you can move it around, so it's not a set composition. So you could then do something that's maybe creating the light source from this direction, and then start drawing in from this direction. So it's something that's physical, something that's constantly moving. And again, it's going to be up to you as the artist with how you design that composition and how it's going to change. But it's a great exercise in training that hand-eye coordination. So keep working in, and then it might be, once you've moved your drawing away, you might like to really highlight some of those contrasts by making the light edges even lighter, and it probably will turn into maybe more of a pattern. This feels like a series of lights moving around in the sky or something like that. So it could be that you actually develop it into a composition that has some narrative to it, or it might be that you want to keep it quite focused from your starting point. You might like to revisit it at different points of the day to see how the light changes and play and experiment with that. So there's lots of possibilities with this, but it needs to be you that's in charge of what interests you on the surface and how you move around those light sources to achieve something that you find interesting and exciting and that you want to capture.